Did it work? I think it's working. I think it's working. Okay. Yes. We are going to be talking about some Dutch tests, some cases that I have had recently. Very excited about this. So I picked a few of them, and there's really important details about each of these cases. So when we're talking about overall hormone testing, I'm referring to the Dutch test. Dutch test is my favorite resource to utilize for hormone testing. It stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. This is a test that comes to your house. You take it if you have a cycle, you take it at a certain time in your cycle, about 5 days post ovulation. If you have trouble with that, we help you figure out when the best time is to take it. If you don't have a cycle, then you can take it anytime. Send it into the lab, then we go over your results. These are, samples of results that we're going to talk about because I want to talk about these cases and the importance of getting great testing and how this can be really, really helpful and understanding what's going on in your body. Okay. And working with someone who knows the details of this. Working with someone who knows the details. So, if you guys have questions on okay, good, that worked. I was having trouble getting the live stream to go. If you guys have questions on anything that I talk about, like, do not hesitate to reach out to me, send me a message, send me an email. But one of the things I'm talking about a lot right now is Dutch testing. So you will find links for this everywhere. But don't hesitate if you need more information on this. Okay, don't hesitate. So, one of the cases that I wanted to cover and talk about, because I think it's important to understand how this applies to your real life. So, this is a real case that I just went over with this gal. Her information. She's mid-40s, right? Very healthy overall. She has 2 kids, has been married for 15 or so years, right? Long time. Good relationship, supportive husband. She's got a great job that she loves, active family life. And she's like, I don't understand why I feel so exhausted all the time and why my body doesn't look like it should and doesn't feel like it should for how hard I work. So she works out 5 to 6 days a week. She eats, she said, so healthy and clean. She goes, if we go out to dinner, I'm getting chicken and a salad every time. I don't eat fast food. I don't eat bad. I don't drink soda or pop. I don't consume any of these things that are bad for you. Why is my body not responding well? And she I'll share this part too. So she'd been working with a different practitioner, and I never wanted, like, everybody has their own theories and things and how they work and what they want to focus on and all this stuff, right? It's just not everything works for everybody. And the way I work with people is really taking your lab results and customizing what I see to what we apply, right? So for example, if we do a lab test of some kind and those numbers look fine, we're not going to go in that direction. If you've had a thyroid test and your thyroid looks great, I don't think we need to start with targeting thyroid with a supplement or something, right? To me, that doesn't make sense. If you don't have a gut issue, I'm not going to start and say, hey, let's just jump in with a GI map. You know what I mean? If you're like, no, my stomach is fine. And that's the same thing with this gal. She's like, my gut feels fine. I don't have any gut issues. I'm not bloated. I'm not whatever, right? Great. You don't need to do a flush, a gut, like a a gut detox or something. Why? Right? And not that that wouldn't be helpful at all at some point, but just how, how is that going to be relevant? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not the biggest fire to put out. We look for, let's start with, like, why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Let's start with the biggest fires to put out. Right? So I'm not saying that what other people doing is wrong or bad, just that's not where I would start. Right? If you don't have any gut issues, I'm not going to be pushing for gut protocols when you're exhausted and your whole system's run down and you have brain fog, right? I'm going to start there. And I'm going to look for things and test for things that are connected with that. So, that's just, again, so this gal had spent, oh my gosh, a lot of money. A lot of money. close to 10 grand over the last couple of years. No joke. Trying to get to the bottom of this. And she's like, yeah, it's not any better. She goes, I really did it. I followed everything to a T. All this stuff, I did not mess up once. I have been so strict. And she's like, I just don't think I can keep going. And that was the part that was so hard for her. That was the part that it's so devastating to feel like I'm doing all this work, yet I'm not seeing anything out of it. And I am exhausted and I am worn down and I can't keep going. It's almost really unfair, right? And she's like, I spent a lot of money and I am literally no better off. And so when we looked at things for her report, so I'm going to show you this and hopefully you guys can see. I would love to figure out how to bring it up here on the screen or something. I'm just not that fancy yet. Maybe I'll get like an editor or something so I can do these things. Okay, so here's the important information from her Dutch test. And when we look at this stuff, like these, look at how high her cortisols are going. Crazy high cortisols. So when she's like, yeah, I feel really stressed. I said, so what I see here on your report is that you have really low levels starting off. So it's like you're waking up kind of on an empty battery and then your stress levels skyrocket. So it's like, it's probably hard to get out of bed. And then you're just wired. And she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's so hard to get out of bed. But then I can just do all the things. I was like, right, because that's an aggressive stress response. And then you're going to crash after that. Look at how low that comes right there. Crash. And she goes, yeah, I have a hard, I definitely crash in the afternoon. Like after work, if I go home and sit down, I have a really hard time getting up again. Sometimes I'll fall asleep. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's going to be blood sugar dysregulation because of this cortisol, right? There's going to be other things to address and inflammatory things happening because her system is so all over the place. So we talked a lot about that, about getting her system to regulate overall and function differently because those cortisols is what's going to drive a lot of dysregulation. And no matter what she's doing, right, if we're not targeting the right thing, cortisol reaction, she's going to continue to wake up again and again, the same every day. Wake up and be exhausted. Then this huge adrenaline rush gets her going and pew! And that feeling in the morning and that like morning midday part where you're like, okay, I'm doing all the things and I'm taking care of this and I'm taking care of that and I'm making decisions on this and I'm putting out this fire and this person needs this and da 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 da. But it's a frantic anxiety piece of this where you're go, 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 go. And a lot of gals will lean into that because then they know in the afternoon they crash so hard that they're like, I can't do anything. I'm like worthless. I can't get off the couch. I can't focus on anything. Oh, what's wrong with me? And I'm like, nothing. Your system just got burned out because you had such an aggressive response and now it's crashing. That's a normal reaction when you have these types of patterns that we're looking at. We want to even it out. We want to smooth out that line. So you're not starting with that huge spike and then not crashing so hard. I had a gal, this is a different gal that I'm going to talk about. She would come home from work and be so exhausted and her kids would want to play with her and she would lay on the couch and like fall asleep while her kids played on the floor. And then she said when we started working together, she was able to lay there and not fall asleep and she would hold the Barbie for her girls. And then it got to be where she was sitting on the couch and then she was sitting on the floor and playing with them. And she said it dawned on her one day when she got home from work and she had picked up her kids from daycare, had come home from work, and they dropped their stuff off in the house. And she said, we were running around playing tag outside. And she said, I stopped and realized, oh my God, I'm better. I'm back. This is me. And it took several months to get there, but she had the same thing where she would get everybody going in the morning and it's stress, 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 and then go to work and stress, 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 and she would crash. So we applied some nutrient changes, right? Some herbal changes, some adaptogens and things like that to help her body manage that stress response, worked on her circadian rhythms. And it slowly started to change over to have such a different response. So these are absolutely possible things to happen, but we need to target, like know what's going on first so that we can target it. So you don't waste your time trying to do a gut flush when you're like, yeah, my gut's fine. I'm just exhausted in the afternoon. You don't say. You don't say. Oh my God. Okay, the other thing that I want to point out here, which Dutch test looks at, so this is an estrogen pathway. This is going to look like gobbledygook right now, right? This is going to look like gobbledygook. But what we're looking at down here is a methylation activity. This is not a genetic test or anything for MTHFR. It is not that, but it does tell me how well you're methylating your estrogens, which is also linked to how well you're methylating overall. And if you are stressed, like this gal is and has been, right? Has been for a while. That stress is also going to decrease your body's natural methylation process. Now, what is methylation? Why is this important? Methylation is involved in repairing cells and DNA. It's involved in creating energy. It's involved in your metabolism. It's involved in your brain function and everything. So if your methylation is lowering in activity, it lowers the function of all that other stuff. So you essentially just feel kind of like garbage, like moving through sludge. And your whole body's moving through sludge. Yes, that's methylation. And we get to see that process here, and it creates and adds to other hormonal issues. So having more cramps, having heavier cycles, more irregular, more PMS symptoms, making those PMS symptoms worse, essentially. Right? So why would that happen? Again, she's just not methylating well, which her stress levels are also going to negatively impact her body's ability to methylate very well. So we're going to support the methylation. That's going to help clear out that cortisol. And we're going to support her system overall with the stress response. We look at the hydration piece. That's what this page is. That was really good for her overall. And then, yes, the other thing on here that we look at is a cortisol clearance. Not good cortisol clearance. And then the last page here, when we look at nutrient levels and neurotransmitter levels, there was a few things on here where I was like, what? I went back and actually checked 3 times, triple checked what she had written down in her intake form. And this is something that we do any call that at me or any of the doctors on my team that we get on, we all collaborate on things. And when we have you fill out paperwork, we actually read it. Beforehand. I read over things. We make notes on things, like making sure, like, okay, I'm putting all these pieces together. So before I even talk to her, I have an initial puzzle piece in my head about what's happening, right? I Kristen, I just got here. It sounds like you're talking about me. That's hilarious. It's not. This one isn't you. But that's for sure the methylation piece of it, right? And that's it, right? Like I look at all these things, and I looked at all this stuff, and I was going through and I was like, okay, so cortisol is definitely an issue. There's inflammation going on. There's the methylation piece, and there's nutrient deficiencies. And I looked at her list of her intake form. The box where we have people fill out the supplements that you're taking, she had filled out a paragraph. No joke, a paragraph. And I was like, is this the right one I'm looking at? Like, am I looking at the wrong thing? I got to be looking at the wrong one. This can't be the intake for this person. Maybe they have the same first name and I accidentally got the wrong one. This absolutely can't be. Triple checked it. It was the right person. This gal was taking a paragraph, handfuls of supplements every day, and is nutrient deficient. B12 deficient. She's taking a B6, biotin deficient. And then look at this neuroinflammation down here, 14, way above range. And I was like, again, so with this case specifically, she had been working her butt off, meaning working her butt off. She's been working with somebody for a couple of years, spent 10 grand on all of this stuff, taking handfuls of supplements, eating so clean, salad and chicken and veggies and all this stuff. Exercising is active, and she still feels like garbage. And they're having her do like stuff for her thyroid, which her thyroid numbers are fine. I saw multiple thyroid tests for her. They were fine. They were good. And these gut flushes and stuff. I'm like, but you don't have gut issues. And there's a gut indicator on this test too. And I was like, your gut indicator looks good. Again, are these bad things too? They're not bad by themselves, but of the list of the top 20 things that I would put on to start with, that wouldn't even make the top 20 list. It wouldn't probably even, I mean, maybe the top 50. I don't know. But there's like that doesn't make the top list. What I am seeing in your report is the cortisols that you're not methylating and not clearing cortisol at all. You're inflamed and you have nutrient deficiencies. Those are the four main things that your system is showing me. And you're taking all these supplements. And it's not bad to take supplements. It's just not helpful if you're taking supplements and it doesn't address any of these things. None of the things that she was taking was addressing the inflammation, the nutrient deficiencies, the methylation, or the cortisol. And she was like, I feel like terror, like she was almost mad about it. I was like, listen, we know now we can change things moving forward, all this stuff. And she was like, I can't believe I spent all this time trying to fix this. And I was, moving in the wrong direction. I was like, listen, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why we always test before we make recommendations moving forward. And we always want to make sure that we retest or look at things or understand what your body's doing and really target specifically for you. That's what makes a big difference, right? And not everybody's body responds the same. Not everybody's journey is going to be the same through this. But to have it be, I want to say, somewhat helpful to understand, like, oh, there's this. And she said, like, yeah, I have to take a vitamin B6. If I don't, I get really crabby. I was like, oh, okay. Well, you're also deficient in B12. So imagine how good you're going to feel when you get that one in there. And she was like, yeah, because we ask about hair, skin, and nails, things like that. And she's like, oh, my nails are fine. Sometimes they break, but she's like, my hair is starting to really get brittle at the ends. She's like, it's fine up here, but here, the rest of it is not good. Well, her biotin is really off. So of course, right? Of course, all the things that she's talking about, to me, it makes sense. So if we focus on these different things and they're all interconnected, having a lot of cortisol is going to, decrease the methylation process. If you're not methylating well, that's going to make it harder to kick out that cortisol and clear it out. Being nutrient deficient means you're not going to have that energy, and being inflamed is going to slow everything else down too. So what's really great about identifying these things is that there's a lot of basic things that we can apply that are going to target multiple areas. So for example, I mean, some of it is like, if you're nutrient deficient, you got right? You got to get those nutrients in. And for some people, genetically, they just need more, right? For someone who's not a good methylator, it's easier to get deficient on B vitamins. Even if you're eating really healthy, it's not about how clean you eat. It's about how you're absorbing and if your body's able to take that in. So again, not even sometimes it's gut absorption, but sometimes it's the process that your body has to utilize those nutrients, to break down, process, and utilize those nutrients. And there can be genetic factors like methylation that get in the way of processing those nutrients really well. So that's what we do is make sure we're working on all those things. And then applying tactics that you can, implement and do. For example, there's a bunch of different things that you can do to take down inflammation. I had this conversation this week too. Somebody asked me like, oh, I heard that the vibration plate is good. And I was like, sure. And they're like, do I have to buy one? No, like there's a ton of other ways that you can take down inflammation and help your body deal with inflammation. Or someone else said like, oh, I don't want to take another supplement. I don't want to take a supplement you don't have to, right? You can help your body flush out that inflammation as well. That can be done through dry brushing, rebounding, lymph drainage, all this. There's a ton of different ways that you can do it. So sometimes I make recommendations for people based on your schedule. What do you have time for? What do you have time for? Do you have time for this or not? And if you don't, it's not going to be helpful to tell someone, hey, go meditate for 30 minutes, then sit in a sauna and do all these things. And you're like, I don't have a sauna. I don't have access to one. I don't have time to spend an hour in a sauna or whatever. That's not helpful versus saying, oh, hey, spend at least 5 minutes dry brushing. There you go. That you can do. So, there is that. Okay. This other one that I wanted to show you, this one is from last. Okay, we're going to do this one last. Oh, I'm having such a hard time deciding. Both of these tests are from last year. I did not order these labs. I was consulting with someone. This poor gal. She really, really, really wants to have kids, doesn't understand why she's having a hard time getting pregnant. Look at these cortisols. Again, this is a different person. She's in her early 20s. I picked some cases that have different ages here, that different age ranges. She's in her early 20s and her cortisol's through the roof. And she doesn't have testosterone and things, right? So again, working with someone else that is not like, again, to just say, oh, take a multivitamin or make sure you're doing this. But if you're not addressing cortisol levels that are literally off the charts like this, do you see this? This is insane. And then look at this clearance up here. Terrible clearance. Where's the clearance? It's not happening. It's not happening. So that's the super hard thing here is how is your system supposed to clear all this out, right? And the same thing with this gal here, the same thing, which to me was just heartbreaking. I was like, if you're trying to get pregnant, right? Like she's married. She's been married for several years. She's like, we want to have a big family. My husband's a little bit older. So, I came into this knowing like, this is what I want. I want a family. I want to get married and have a family. And I haven't been successful. What's going on? Look at all these nutrient deficiencies. And this was a case too, where I was like, okay, your gut marker looks good, so we do have to, when there's that many, and she's so young, again, 20 years younger than the last case I just talked about, but it's the same thing, stress and nutrient deficiencies. And I'm like, yeah, your body, that's not going to be a focus. If you're already nutrient deficient, I mean, creating another human and carrying it takes so much energy from your system. So how is your body going to be focused on that when you're already nutrient deficient? I was like, it's like you're in a hole. We got to get you out of the hole before we can move forward. And that was not being addressed and targeted specifically, right? That was the other thing. It was really, really tough for her to go forward with this because I was like, she'd had a retest done and I was like, you're still nutrient deficient. She was not as inflamed. And methylation wasn't a big issue for her. But I was like, there's these big pieces that are being missed. And again, when we talk about fertility, nutrient deficiency is so hard. It's really hard to have a successful pregnancy if you're nutrient deficient. It's also just really hard on your body. Like you're not going to feel good. You're not going to feel good with that. So that was that case. Again, I wanted to highlight this one because the first one, nutrient deficiencies